one of the things that kind of cracked something in my mental walls on my mission was watching women that I knew didn't even have the money to feed their children, and they lived on dirt floors. Like, they were worried about how they were going to eat beans and rice that night. And yet I was visiting them, telling them, you must give 10% of your income to the church, or you can't be baptized, or you can't go to the temple and receive these saving ordinances that will allow you to be with your family forever. And that just seemed so inherently wrong.
A critical component to mind control. Being made over to be clones of the person who's at the top of the pyramid.
Interested in the subject because of my own cult involvement. I was recruited in 1974 into a front group of the Moonies.
Hello, I'm Dr. Steve Hassan with another episode of Cults, Culture, and Coercion. I have with me Irene of Irene's Entropy, a musician, an astrophysicist. No, you're not an you did astrospace mechanical engineering and piloting. We're going to get into it. Forgive me for not reading the bio specifically, but you grew up as a Mormon and were really into it, and you decided to name your journey Irene's Entropy because you'll explain the details, but you decided to exit it and into like, who am I and what is reality and what am I doing, and confronted your phobias, and we're going to have you explain that too. But I want to just plug, since you don't have a book yet, your Red Door Door Walkers coffee line. So I have several of these, and I got to meet you in person with your ecologist husband for your special thing, golfing with Irene. And even though I couldn't get the damn putt even to go in without using my foot at the end, which was kind of funny. Anyway, you're a fascinating woman. You write songs. You're a musician. You're a multidisciplinary creator, engineer, entrepreneur. And I'm so happy to have you on my podcast to share your journey with us.
Thank you. Do I call you Steve or Dr. Hassan?
You can call me Steve. That's just
perfect.
Fine.
We have met. So.
A bunch of my listeners know that when I first got out of the Moonies and learned about cults and mind control, the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons were not on my radar screen at all. And the Mormons came into my screen after I was asked to help people, 15-year-olds who run away from the fundamentalist Latter-day Saints cult of Warren Jeffs. And then the attorney generals of Utah and Arizona asked me to do a training for that cult. And I was on Tuppo Times Dr. Phil, I'm embarrassed to say, but I was, because they asked me to counsel these two girls who didn't want to marry 60-year-olds. And then I got an email from the Ex-Mormon Foundation in Salt Lake City, who saw me and said, hey, would you come to Salt Lake City and share your bite model of authoritarian control with us? And I'm like, you're ex-Mormons? Really? Are you a cult too? And they're like, come and share your model and come meet us. And I got to meet 250 ex-Mormons, and my eyes were like, whoa, I had no idea. So I'm just wanting to do this introduction to say that for me, it was a real learning. And I've been learning ever since by meeting former members and going out to Utah. And I even did a one-day workshop in Utah for 150 ex-Mormons. And so I was excited to meet you, and I really like encouraging survivors who want to also educate and help others to think for themselves.
Yeah. And I will say that when I was leaving the Mormon Church, I learned of the bite model and I used your work. So thank you for putting it out there. It's obviously, making a difference in people's lives. I think it's the Mormon media has been getting a lot of attention lately. There's
Hmm.
a Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. There's some TV show that's on, and I find there's a lot more stuff in social media about Mormonism right now.
Yeah.
So it's very relevant.
And more famous people coming out of the closet going, "Yep, I grew up that way and no longer."
Yeah. And I think my story, I've seen within the last decade that because I left the church officially in 2019, my records were removed.
Hmm.
So it hasn't been that long, but it's been 7 years since I really started my exodus. And in
Hmm.
that time frame, I've seen millions of dollars poured into the marketing of the Mormon Church to change everything. They don't call themselves Mormon anymore. It's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And even their videos or their Sunday school lessons have all changed to try to be more of a whitewashed Christianity.
Hmm.
And I might be one of the last generational youth that left that still remembers what it was like before they started kind of whitewashing things.
Yeah, and I'll just say, because I have a 49-year perspective on things, when the internet was created, and then people started uploading scanned documents from the 1800s. And I remember a New York Times front page article. There were ex-Mormons in Europe, I believe, who were like, "We can't believe our church lied to us about the true history of our church." And they were like, ah, and it really created a crisis for the
Yeah.
organization.
I actually just met after I golfed with you. I was in New York and I spent a couple of days with a gentleman that was responsible for something called the Swedish Rescue, who basically organized a bunch of questionnaires, and collecting data and stories from people whose lives were being absolutely shattered and destroyed by the history that they were finding of the
Hmm.
church. And he brought this to the Mormon apostles and said, you are killing people. Like people are literally suicidal over this. Like you have to take a look at this. And because of his work, they released what's called the gospel topic essays, where they start coming clean about the history of Mormonism and Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. So that whole trip out on the East Coast, meeting you and then meeting with him, and it was kind of this full circle moment for me. So it was awesome.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And I heard recently that the LDS are paying influencers to spread positive messages about the
I saw
organization.
that. I'm not surprised by that. And they have over $300 billion to toss around to start paying influencers. So I wasn't surprised by it, but I kind of laughed because that's so dishonest to pay people to say specific things. Like, because they're very strict on, people might not know this, but you're trained as a child. When you go up to the pulpit and you bear your testimony, there are a list of do's and don'ts. You
Hmm.
say, like, the curriculum is, I'd like to bear my testimony. I know this church is true. I know Joseph Smith was a prophet. I know the Book of Mormon is true. And then you go from there, you give a little personal experience, and you say, in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Like the Mormon Church has always been very good about giving curriculum, bullet point lists, scriptures you should say, shouldn't say, and they train you from a very young age on what you
Hmm.
should or should not say to the public and at the pulpit. So I was not surprised when I saw that they're paying influencers and giving them lists of things to say.
Yeah, so two things I want to ask you to comment about. First of all, you mentioned I think it's $250 billion investment, you know, cash that was outed by a whistleblower from the Mormon Church
Mm-hmm.
itself that makes something like $8 billion of interest a year. And yet the church makes poor people tithe 10%, even
Mm-hmm.
when they don't have any money. So I wanted to ask you to comment on that. And then I want to ask you about the 2-year mission that you
Yeah,
served.
definitely. I saw one of your posts the other day talking about this. First things first, the money that the church has.
Yeah, they're wealthy and they're politically powerful and they're overrepresented in Homeland Security and FBI and CIA. That's something people don't know.
Oh, it was common. It's common cultural knowledge, I think, at least for me. It was common cultural knowledge that many missionaries, when they return home, they already know a second language and they end up in the CIA or the FBI.
And they don't drink alcohol, right? And supposedly.
Yep, you don't drink alcohol, you don't smoke, you don't drink coffee, there's no addictions, and you're also very easy to manipulate because you've spent your whole life being guided or manipulated into a certain way of thinking. And so it's extremely easy for these young 19, 20-year-olds that are coming home from their Mormon mission.
Mm-hmm.
They already know a second language. They just want to get married, start a family, and easily go into, like I said, FBI, CIA. I actually, when I got home from my mission, I'm so sorry. Let me back up. Before my mission, because let's go through that story.
Please.
I went to Brigham Young University for a year. I grew up a very scrupulous is a word that I hear a lot of people using lately, but that definitely describes my childhood. I studied the scriptures. Being a woman, I recognized that I did not have any priesthood power or authority. And so to me, the only way I could hold my own in a room was to know more scripture, more history, more memorized passages. My ringtone on my first flip phone was a recording of Jeffrey R. Holland, one of the Mormon apostles. Like, I had pictures of the second coming in my locker at school. I was
True
that
believer.
girl. I was that girl.
Yeah.
And so I left for Brigham Young University and I spent a year there. All classes I took were generally religious based. Jesus Christ and the Everlasting Gospel, Joseph Smith History, Book of Mormon 1, Book of Mormon 2. And I was preparing for my Mormon mission. One of the classes I took was Arabic because I was going to learn Arabic and Hebrew and try to study in Jerusalem. The church has a center there. And was just going to dedicate my life to studying the church. And if anything, probably end up an educator in the church. If I didn't get married first, I wasn't planning on finishing my degree if I got married and started having kids. So with that, I left for my Mormon mission at 19 and I was sent to Tegucigalpa, Honduras, and was surrounded by poverty the entirety of my mission. It was very dangerous areas. At times, I lived through a civil insurrection when a political, the wrong president got voted in at one point. And to get back to your original question on the tithing, yes, the church is very wealthy, but I had to pay money to go on my mission. Missionaries pay to be there. And then it is complete service. You don't get paid at all. You're expected to leave your home. You get up at 6 a.m. You hit the streets by, I think after scripture study, it's like 8 or 9 a.m. And you do not go back to your apartment until like 9 p.m. at night.
And you're paired with another missionary, right? You're not allowed to be alone per se, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah. So first you go to the Mission Training Center and you spend a couple months there. I was in Mexico, and that's where I think the damage truly starts. And people don't even know that the Mission Training Center is really a thing if you're not Mormon. You just hear about the mission. So when you go there, it's like a compound and you're put into this rigorous schedule where you have classes to attend. You're given the pamphlets and you need to know how to teach the lessons. You're given fake investigators of the church and you have to make them feel the spirit. You make them cry, you bear your testimony, and then you challenge them to baptism. So you're in this environment where truly what's happening is you're being stripped of your identity.
Yeah.
And it's being replaced with the identity that you're a soldier for the Lord. You are a consecrated missionary, meaning that you're giving all of your time, talents, thoughts to the church. And when I served, part of that meant being separated from the worldly things at home, including your family. So I was not allowed to speak to my family. except for one phone call on Christmas for 1 hour and one phone call on Mother's Day for 1 hour. And I could read emails from my family 1 hour once a week on Mondays. That was it.
That's information control, big time. I want to just add, PBS did a documentary on the Mormon missionary thing. I remember maybe 20 years ago. And my
really?
recollection was it was in black and white even. So it might have been even older than that. And I'm sure I have it somewhere on a hard drive because I try to save stuff. But when I saw that, it was like, this is a mind control cult. Like the 2 years missionary is like stereotypical Moonie level mind control cult stuff.
Well, and the idea is, right, you're there to convert people, yes. Right. But if I'm being honest, like, if you're in a third world country where there's less education and not as much internet, sure, you'll have more baptisms. If you're over in Europe, you're lucky if you get one, maybe two baptisms. Mm-hmm. But in general, the goal is for these kids to come out completely consecrated to the work or consecrating their lives really to be true believing Mormons. It's not that you're converting or baptizing others to the church. Great if that happens.
Right.
What the church is really concerned about is keeping the youth dedicated to coming home, getting married, and having children, and then that feeds the population of the church.
That's
at
really
least from my perspective. That's what's going on.
Yeah, and my recollection when we talked, you were explaining that it was really dangerous being there, and you were really fortunate not to be attacked and harmed.
Yeah. So after the Mission Training Center, when I left for Tegucigalpa, you get there, you're brought into a building, and it's this huge moment in the mission when you get your trainer. Mm-hmm. It's a big deal when you meet your trainer. So trainers are put on one side of the room. You and all the newbies are put on the other side. And then they call your name and your trainer's name. And you go and you meet. And that's going to be your trainer for the next 6 weeks, possibly 12. Because there's a transfer every 6 weeks. So then you're just bussed off. Like, I got on a bus and we drove hours and hours away. And you're on your own. And it's you and your trainer, and you have to study the curriculum every day and just go out and hit the streets and challenge as many people to baptism as possible. So quite literally, you have me and another 19-year-old girl just roaming the streets. There's no one there to help if something goes wrong. We had a track cell phone, and I think our nearest leader, could have been, miles and miles away. And the bus systems there are so broken, like anything could have happened. And things almost did happen. Yeah. I was rape threats and derogatory things said to me every single day almost. It was not a safe place for a 19-year-old woman.
So I want to hear more about your experience and how you came to walk through your own red door and the story of your name and more of your story, please. Yeah.
I will finish the thought before we go on to that section, because your original question was about tithing and the church having a lot of money, and we got into my mission. Right. So the idea, one of the things that kind of cracked something in my mental walls on my mission was watching women that I knew didn't even have the money to feed their children, and they lived on dirt floors. Like, they were worried about how they were going to eat beans and rice that night. And yet I was visiting them, telling them, you must give 10% of your income to the church, or you can't be baptized, or you can't go to the temple and receive these saving ordinances that will allow you to be with your family forever. Right. And that just seemed so inherently wrong.
It is. It is inherently wrong. It's evil.
Yeah. And it was this cognitive dissonance happening inside of me as I was living through it on my mission. So I will close that loop of, yes, the church is wealthy. Yes, they make poor people pay 10% of their money to the church. It was a it was a huge crack in my logic whenever I was a missionary. So fast forwarding from that, I get home from my mission and I met my now husband, who I call the Ecologist online.
Because he was studying to get his PhD in environmental science.
Philosophy of ecology. So he already had his master's. And so he was more concerned with my thought processes. We would be having conversations. We worked in the same place. And he was like, that doesn't make sense. Like, you seem very intelligent. We're having this conversation. And then you just out of nowhere said something that makes no logical sense whatsoever. Let's talk about it. And he phrased it in a way that sometimes I got defensive, but generally he created an environment where I was just able to talk about it and speak my way through the logic until I eventually started seeing that, oh, maybe I've got something wrong. Maybe I need to rethink my train of thought.
Or the group's train of thought that you had adopted, right?
Yes, very much so. So, and we can get more into that if you would like. But to answer your question about how I became Irene and Irene's Entropy, I was 21 when I officially had that paradigm shattering. And it seemed like I would never make it out whole. Because I had left my family behind and I had no idea what I was going to study in school or what I was going to do. And I was just grasping at anything that could be an identity for me after my previous identity was shattered. So I at first went to school for psychology because I thought, oh, I'll be a therapist. Because if I become a therapist, I can fix myself. And then
many of us do go into psychology to understand ourselves and want to make sense of the world. Yep.
And my partner, my now husband, but the ecologist at the time, was very adamant that I get my education. No matter what it was, he said, no one can take a degree away from you. You must get your education. So I was going for psychology. I got the associate's degree, and then I decided to change my degree because in the end, I needed to heal myself no matter what. But I didn't want to dedicate myself to becoming a therapist. And so I said, what's the hardest thing I can imagine doing? And I thought, oh, if I can get an engineering degree, because I was very scared of math. I hadn't done math in years. I didn't like math. And it really was just on a whim. I just was like, you know what? I'm terrified of engineering. If I can get a degree in that, then I can do anything in life. So I went for it.
Wow.
And
that's very unusual, I might add, that somebody says, what's the hardest thing that I can study? Well,
at that point, I just wanted to challenge myself and prove that I was smart enough to do it because, I still had this huge chip in my shoulder that, one of my last conversations with my father was him saying, well, are you happy? And I was like, yeah, I think I'm happy, Dad. And he was like, well, hope you stay happy. Like this connotation that the life I was building, I couldn't be happy in it. And I really felt like my family thought I wasn't smart enough or I wasn't good enough or I couldn't be happy outside of the church.
That's the key, is if your parents are in it and you are questioning it, they often will excommunicate you even and not want to talk to you, right?
Yeah. And it's a mutual thing. I should table that conversation because that's another tangent of the separation of family whenever you leave. But so I went for the degree and it was purely out of almost spite and a chip on my shoulder. And I ended up making it through the degree, graduated with my degree in mechanical engineering. I also got a job in aerospace and worked my way up from the assembly line to working in the engineering department. And then I ended up taking over a program at a very young age and finished that program. I don't think I can actually say what it was, but it was for a helicopter company. And after that, I started leading other programs. But again, the engineering thing wasn't what I really wanted to be doing in life. I liked it. I learned a
Mm.
lot of lessons from it. But along the way, I had been developing Irene's Entropy the whole time.
Mm.
And it's Irene's Entropy because Irene was my Mormon temple name. When I was 19 and I went through the ceremony, Irene was a secret name, a token that I received that was supposed to be a password for me to cross the threshold of heaven's door. And it was a secret. And I thought, if I can take this name that was supposed to be kept a secret, and I can instead explore the idea of what is the identity of this girl whose world collapsed, and almost
Mm.
do it through a third party. Like, it was easier for me to write music and start exploring my thoughts through this third party of this name Irene rather than my birth name at the time.
Mm.
I've since legally changed my name to Irene. But and then entropy. Entropy came because I was studying engineering. It's the second law of thermodynamics, and it has everything to do with chaos and disorder in a thermal system. It's a law that says that the energy will forever expand and grow in that expansion, and you can't stop it.
Mm.
And so for me, the idea that Irene, as I started exploring these thoughts, it kept growing and growing, and there was no going back. It
Mm.
truly was Irene's Entropy. And I started performing music under the name, and the more that I spoke, the more that that name meant more to me symbolically and personally, and I felt like it was more me than my
Mm.
original birth name. And so I did legally change my name.
Mm.
And it's a reminder to me every day of my purpose in life, which is to remain authentic and true to myself and never let another organization, whether it be religion, politics, or work, nothing will ever control my mind again. I will always be in a place where I can ask why, and I can think, understand, and make decisions. So
I
that's
want to
how I
jump up and go, yay!
yeah.
Go, girl. Go, Irene. Yay.
Thank you. It's
I mean it. It's just, it always makes me thrilled. It brings almost tears to my eyes when people, have that realization. And it's like, I'm never going back to that shit.
yep.
I'm done with authoritarianism. I want to be me. I want to think for myself and make my own decisions.
And what was that moment for you when you left the Moonies?
It was very different because I wasn't raised in an authoritarian family or religious experience. I got recruited at 19 and a half. I was writing poetry and playing basketball and working as a banquet waiter at the Holiday Inn in Hempstead, Long Island on the weekends while I went to college. So I was like not a joiner or whatever, but I just got deceptively recruited into the Moonies. And that's where I had my mind control authoritarian deep dive into a different identity and belief system, total right-wing fascist system. And it was after a near fatal van crash, 2 weeks in the hospital, visiting my sister. And basically, ex-Moonies hired by my family to deprogram me. And I didn't want to leave the group. I didn't have any doubts consciously about Moon being the Messiah, the equivalent to the prophet in Mormonism, but bigger, because he claimed to be 10 times greater than Jesus Christ and here to build the Garden of Eden on earth. And I was his leader who was going to help lead this whole thing. Anyway, I wanted to prove to my family I wasn't brainwashed and I wasn't in a cult. So I agreed to meet with the ex-members, and they started teaching me about Chinese communist brainwashing. And just like the Ecologist was asking you questions that made you start thinking, they started asking me questions that made me start thinking, because I thought as a Moonie, we were God and communist China was Satan. So I would learn what Satan does, but then the Moonies did all 8 criteria. So for me, it was they gave me one of Moon's speeches, and they just asked me, read this and tell us what you think.
Yeah.
And that is the core of my messaging about how to help a loved one in a cult, is asking a warm, respectful question and being quiet and waiting for a response, and then asking a follow-up question instead of trying to persuade people or, argue with
Yeah.
logic or something. But at the point that I realized Moon was a liar, and therefore he couldn't be the Messiah, he couldn't be a man of God, I just started thinking again. I was like, that means he's not trustworthy. And then I was like, well, what have I been doing for the last 2.5 years? And then I cried for 3 hours.
Yeah. I
But
I cried a
that
lot.
was my waking up. It was like,
Yeah.
my whole world was shattered.
Yep. And it's difficult to describe that to someone who has not been through it, especially when you're born and raised in it, to understand
Especially
that
hard. Yep.
your entire world is no longer the same. Nothing can be as it was. And it's your job to sort through the pieces and figure out, what do I leave behind? What do I take with me? And that's difficult when you've grown up depending on another organization to tell you exactly how to think and what to do and what to wear and what to drink and what to eat. And then all of a sudden, you're responsible for those decisions.
Yeah, and it's harder for people like yourself because your family's still in, and I
Yes.
assume siblings, and everybody you knew who you were close with were still in, and you knew they were going to look at you as a fallen away traitor, weak,
Yep.
blah, blah, blah. So it's harder for people born or raised in these types
Yep.
of groups.
And I think this is a subject, getting back to family. It's worth talking about that. It is a very mutual thing in the excommunication process because my family for a while, they did kind of try, and they're like, no, like we still love you, and we can make this work. But on the other end, I was going, no, no, we can't, because I was in such an extreme family. I grew up hearing my mother or my father talking shit about, there's my aunts and my uncles. Oh, she's an alcoholic. Oh, she joined the church, but she fell away. Or this person is an apostate. And I heard the way that they spoke and degraded other people that left the church or were not faithful to the church. And so I understood, I am not an exception to this rule.
Yeah.
The second I leave this home, you are showing me fake niceties and love, conditional love. But as soon as I leave, that goes away. And I know the conversations that are happening. And I wrote a song later. It's not released, but it's one of my favorites to sing live. It's called The Ghost of Me. And in the chorus, it discusses the idea that even if I was to come and knock on your door, what for? Because you only love the ghost of me, of who I was. You do not love the current version of me. You want me to change and go back to what I was more than anyone else in the world, because you want us to be this perfect family again. And I cannot and I will not be that for you. And so if you can't love and accept me now, then I don't have a place for fake niceties in my conversations. I want to create a family where there is real substance to the growth that I'm experiencing. And so I cut off my father because he was very toxic. And once that happened, the rest of my family just kind of, it naturally followed suit.
Yeah, it's hard for me as a therapist to hear the pain in your voice and that decision. Of course, I've now seen over almost 5 decades, families will leave too. It may take them a decade or two, but you're by leaving and showing your strength and your courage, you're creating a model that there is life after group, especially when you're successful and accomplishing things. It can't help but create dissonance in their minds.
Yeah. And I think I would say I felt pain for years, but I really don't feel pain anymore in in that sense that it keeps me emotionally in a state of sadness. Like, I want to give that hope to other people that no, it's actually not painful once you start discovering real relationships and real
Definitely.
unconditional love.
Sure.
I have grown to love like the family that I have created, and I want to give people that hope that of course there is always like a mother wound or a father wound, and that exists. It's not going away.
Right.
But giving people that hope that after a toxic relationship or leaving a cult, like if you experience that pain, there is so much beauty in finding
Amen.
those relationships.
Pardon me for using a religious term. Tell us the story of the Red Door.
Yeah. So in my music, I really wanted a visual way of portraying how my emotions, how I collapsed, and how emotion by emotion, rebuilding my understanding of who I was, how that process happened. And so I created a series of music videos where you watch my world shatter. I take pills with my family every morning, figuratively. And one day I discover what the pills actually are. And then I start questioning. And my parents yell at me, and I end up escaping after they tried to sedate me. And I find this red door in the middle of the street. Walking through it, I enter this realm, this desert realm that is very symbolic of the loneliness in my mind as I chose to leave my family behind, because it is painful and it is lonely. That song is actually called Freedom Was Pain. Because freedom was the most painful thing I ever experienced. So I wander through the desert. I end up, you listen to the lyrics, more lessons are learned. Then the door appears again, because this door only appears when I am ready to learn and change, let go of some things, and I'm ready to discover some new things about myself. So the door itself becomes a symbol of change. And so I call my fans door walkers, because we are willing to walk through doors. We're willing to learn and change. And so door walker became a vocabulary term that I used. And so coffee just naturally came about because I am ex-Mormon and I was not allowed to drink coffee growing up. My first time ever having a sip of coffee, I was terrified. I was 21 years old and I was terrified of a cup of coffee. And after that first sip, years later, I drink it every day. I love it. It's part of my routine. But again, this idea that one sip could change your life, one choice can change your life, that seems terrifying at first. But in the end, it's not. You have to be willing to walk through that door. So it's called Door Walker Coffee.
Yep.
So you can go to doorwalkerco.com. And I'm actually, the site is up this week. It's officially launching. So
that's awesome. Can I just add that one of the universal mind control techniques of all these groups is what I call phobia indoctrination. And this is the installation of irrational fears that if you do something like drink a sip of coffee, your spiritual life will, go up in smoke and you'll lose your eternal salvation. And the thing about phobias, what I explain to my clients, and some people have actual phobias, not related to cults, but just like life phobias, I explain we're supposed to be afraid of things that are actually dangerous. We're supposed to have our amygdala firing and our heart, starts beating fast and we have more cortisol. We're supposed to react that way. But the notion that a person or a group can install a phobia has nothing to do with danger, but you believe it's danger, right? And the most powerful technique for helping people with those types of phobias is what's called in vivo desensitization, or having the experience. So someone who has a fear of dogs, you start with showing them pictures of dogs and that you realize the picture's not going to attack you, and you teach them there's a happy dog with a wagging tail and there's a growling dog with big teeth, and how to discriminate what could be dangerous. But ultimately, holding the dog and stroking the dog and having the dog lick you, you're like, I was so afraid for years, right? And so I just wanted to make that link, because there's, I think, 30 million plus Americans have a phobia, aside from cult members, just to understand we can control our minds. And sometimes our minds are on automatic when there shouldn't be.
Belief is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I talk a lot about self-belief. So this is fun because I just recorded this music video last weekend and introduced in this music video in the Doorwalker series. I'm currently in the series, I'm stuck in this forest where I'm fighting my demons like every day until I make this terrible discovery on who the head demon actually is. And it's like this complete betrayal. You have to go watch PTSD.
Yep.
And so in this one, I have completely submitted myself to believing that my demons do control me. I have no fight left in me. But in this video, I'm given a tool to help me on my journey, and it's called the compass of self-belief, which the Ecologist and I co-developed from his studies of ecology and landscapes. And the idea is that self-belief is what you gain when you use the compass, and north is self-awareness.
I love it.
Self-awareness must be your north. Otherwise, every other direction is going to be off if you don't have that reference point. So when I start using this compass, you see me at first discard it because I don't believe in myself. I don't have that capacity at that point, or at least feeling I do. But by the end, I start to exercise just a bit of self-belief. And as the compass points where I need it to, I find the red door again. So it's, to me, the power of self-belief is something that I talk about often. And I think it's so necessary right now because we're allowing outside forces to control our beliefs as a society, it seems.
Yeah.
Religion, politics, we're being divided into an us versus them mindset, which in itself is extremely cult-like. I know that you have written books on this. I have your books here.
Yeah. So let me just add, if I may, from a psychology teaching point of view, is I want to validate, first of all, what you just said and say that when you're raised in a cult, we are trained to have an external locus of control for your identity and your decisions, because you're always looking to the prophet, or you're looking to your parents or someone else. If you're a woman, you have to have a man to be the head of the household and such. And so as a therapist, I teach developing an internal locus of control in your body. And that's where it links to your concept about a compass of self-belief. Because if you come back to that body, and I need to learn how to trust my own judgments and be true to myself, that's the healing path. So there's very much linkage there.
Do you have chapters on that in your books?
I'm sure I've written about it, and I've done it. I talked about it in the course and such. But I'll just add that mind control is known as a dissociative disorder to your authentic self and then the cult self, and so when you get out, you're like, who am I? And you have to deconstruct. I talked about this with Monty Mader, a mutual friend and survivor. You have to deconstruct who was that identity and all of that, right? And so being in your body in the here and now is our true self. you
Mm-hmm.
know, when you were in religious cults, and don't trust your body, and that feeling is wrong, that you have feelings for another person. Ooh, you know, you've got to suppress that.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not how we're built. As
Yep.
as a species, we're supposed to be attracted to people and, you know, have feelings and have
Yep.
hormones.
Yep. And if we can learn to control those things from ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
then it's much more, there's authenticity and there's
Yeah.
so much more power in what we do. It is, it is insane to me how much, when I was a Mormon, I mean, I was a great Mormon. I gave powerful testimonies and I, you know, converted and baptized people, but the power of self-belief that I have and the drive that I have, like I feel so much more empowered to live my life when I am truly living it from myself and not from an outside organization telling me what I should do or who I should be. There's such a difference. And I never would have known.
1,000%. I
Never would have
validated
known.
1,000,000%. And once you've been liberated, you never want to go back to that, because it really is a shadow. It's just like ooh, you
Yep.
know?
Well, and that's the entropy, right? That
Yeah.
it's going to keep moving forward and it's chaotic. It's chaotic and it's disorderly and it's messy, but it's real and it's authentic and it is in the here and the now. And it's so much more
Mm-hmm.
powerful. So
Yeah. And your creativity comes from your authentic self. That's
yes.
my belief. I mean, when I was writing poetry daily, it would be like just tuning in and words would start flowing. And I'm sure it's like that when you're writing music and songs.
Yeah. I think that for me, songwriting was a way to distill the the most important thoughts because I had severe ADHD, never diagnosed, but it was obvious from, and I think many people that leave cult like structures have
Hmm.
some ADHD in them as they're trying to figure out, well, this, and, you know, I, now maybe I think this way, but what if I think this way? And this person said this to me. And like, I've just met so many people with similar stories as mine that they feel so disorganized in their thoughts. And whether or not it's ADHD diagnosed or not, it's similar.
Yeah,
Um,
I think there's a lot that's called ADHD that isn't, but when you're coming out of a cult, your mind is jumping around like crazy because you
yeah.
don't have that organizing, you know, anchor in your body with a
Can you
stable sense of self. And that's what you
can you
want to cultivate.
help further define that? Because I hear people calling it ADHD, and sometimes I reference that. But what do you define as true ADHD versus other?
I think that we have a tendency, and maybe it's big pharma, and maybe it's part of the problem of the psychology industry, to just like label people's experiences. But for me, you know, again, I've been training therapists for decades now. I think it's really the best therapists are people who do a lot of psychoeducation to teach people to learn how their mind works, you know, like how,
Yeah,
and that we have a central core self, but we have parts of us, you know, and it's not that they're separate entities or anything. But when I become, you know, the professor Steve and I have to teach a course, you know, I'm not the same Steve who's out dancing at live music. It's a very different set of neurons that are activated. And I don't, you know, when you're doing sports, you don't want to be thinking what you're going to have for lunch. You want to be in the flow of that experience. So for me, it's about being in control of your own mind, you know, like
yeah,
having that internal locus of control and knowing who you are and loving yourself and accepting even
yeah.
your shadow parts of yourself, that you're not perfect. And yeah, I
Well,
make
and that's where the
mistakes.
creativity comes in, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because bringing it back to like the songwriting really helps distill or organize the thoughts in my head into these verses where I took paragraphs of these, to me, like ADHD sporadic thoughts, and then putting it into two simple lines.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was able to say, oh, like that's my true thought right there. And so I would encourage anyone that if you're leaving a toxic relationship, a cult, or political realm, like creativity is one of the best ways to organize your thoughts and find those true parts of yourself.
And
Absolutely.
I would recommend, this will be anti-tech message for a minute, but spending 8-10 hours a day on your cell phone, on social media, that's going to give you ADHD, because it's like your attention span's getting trained to last 2 seconds instead of deep thought, deep reflection, meditation, where you're actually focusing your mind and such. And you know, I'm really a big fan of in real life and the importance of having real friends, like having a partner you can hug, you can look in their eyes, you're not looking at pixels, you're like breathing each other's air, hearing each other's heartbeat. Like for me, that's the essence of humanity. And I'm very critical of this, you know, tech bros, you know, we're going to all be in robot bodies and live forever shit and go to Mars and all of that stuff is just like, you know, maybe in, you know, a few thousand years, maybe if we're around, if we don't blow up the earth or we don't warm it to the point that the earth says eject the species of human beings because they're too toxic for us. I don't know, but I love being alive. I'm very grateful to be alive.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate my life more than ever. There's a line in a song that I've written that says, "There are those that think they're oh so clever, wasting all their moments on forever. In the end, no one really knows. In the end, we only know we'll go." And when that is my reference point of thinking, you know what, I don't know what time I have, but because I've been given this life here and now and I can control my thoughts and my experiences, yes, I want to have experiences. I want to meet people, like the opportunity to meet you in person. Anytime I can get an interview in person or I can do a live show, I would 10 out of 10 take that
Great.
over technology because it is a part of the here and now experience. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. And, you know, I'll just reference myself one more time, I promise, last time, but I nearly died in that van crash due to sleep exhaustion in the Moonies. So when I was rescued by the rescue workers and they're like, damn, we can't believe you're still alive. This thing was a pancake. You know, we had to like saw you out of the wreckage, which they thought would blow up from the gas leaks and everything. So I've just had a life where I'm like grateful that I'm alive one more day.
Yeah.
You know, just it's a gift because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or even in another hour. So why not really be in the present and be in our bodies and do every day, contribute and meet people, touch people, make the world a little bit better.
Yep. And I love that's definitely what we're both doing and what I'm trying to do now because I left my full-time engineering job to pursue Irene's Entropy full-time because I truly believe that it's a message that we need in the world right now. We are so divided, especially politically here in the United States. And for me, live music and being able to be together and talk about experiences and that it's not black and white. We live in a world of color and we are deciphering information all the time. We're information overloaded right now in this society. And so, sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I was gonna add one more thing because I've been thinking about it a lot. I actually just interviewed a social psychologist who has a book out called Foolproof, and on how the we should think about mind viruses and like do an inoculation by exposing people to the techniques and everything. And I said to him, I've been feeling like former members of cults. We're the white blood cells of the human species because we lost our freedom, but we know how precious it is. So I'm wanting to encourage, young, beautiful, talented people like yourself to be a role model and reach out to people, and not just from the Mormons, but any group, including political groups, and explain the parallels. And
I often say in my concerts, by the time I get to the second or third song, once the shock factor is kind of worn off of some of the initial parts of my story, I say, I am not the exception. I am the rule. Because our human experience is that we go through change, whether it's you lost a job, you got a divorce, you're moving, someone died. I mean, the point of my story is that I had to pick up the pieces and I had to learn and change and reframe my perspective on the world.
Right.
And also, it's my message that we can do that at any point in time in our lives. And it's our job to be facilitators of that for other people.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be here if my now husband hadn't had the patience or eventually the love that we developed to say, hey, why are you thinking like this? And not saying it in a way that made me defensive, but truly allowed me to have a conversation with him. And I think that is what will heal and change the world. Mm-hmm. Because right now we're so generalized in our statements of this political party said that, they did this is how they think. When really, we're all individuals that perhaps we need a conversation with our neighbor or with a family member where it's a sincere asking, why did you say that? What experience did you have in life that made you believe this? I want to know. And when you can say that with sincerity and authenticity at a personal level, that's where change happens. And then we scale that out to help change the masses. And it's another huge part of, I guess, my reflections in my songwriting is that idea of the facilitation of helping someone ask why.
Yeah, and I'm with you, and I'll say from my experience helping people reality test, I find that saying something more soft, like, I really want to step into your shoes. Can you explain to me how you arrived at that point? So make it into a process kind of question. Might be make them less defensive. I
love that.
I don't know, but for me, it's like, I really want to understand, how do you believe in QAnon? Like, convince me. I want to know your journey. When was your first exposure to QAnon? Do you remember? Was it on your phone? Was it at a friend's? Like, what was it that you thought? What were your feelings when you first and get people to remember, I did think it was a cult at first, or I did have questions about it initially.
Yeah.
Because you're empowering them to process their experience with your assistance. And it's softer. And my experience is, you can't talk someone out of a cult. You can help them reality test for themselves, and they'll leave. But I never found it successful when I say, trust me, I'm the expert. Read my book and you'll know your group is wrong. It's like, they'll be like, get lost, Hassan,
That's funny. That's a rule that eventually in the music video series, you see me go through an experience after I become a door walker and I'm officially like, I'm helping others find their door.
Yeah. That
happens. But I learn a lesson that you can't walk through someone's door for them or with them.
Right.
They have to do that themselves. And my last thought on this is that you truly never know, because I remember a random day in Honduras when I was on my Mormon mission. Mm-hmm. I went up to a guy in the street and I said, would you like to learn how you can be with your family forever? And I was going to launch into this whole spiel. And I just remember he looked at me. I talked to thousands of people on my
Right.
mission. Random guy in the street, and I remember he looked at me and he was like, I don't need whatever you're about to give me for how I can be with my family forever. I'll be with my family forever because we love each other. And I don't need whatever. And he probably obviously knew something about Mormons, but he said, I don't need a ceremony and I don't need any authority to tell me that I can or can't be with my family forever. But thank you very much. And he went on, and that pierced me like an arrow.
That was a mini intervention.
And
That's
yes,
out of my freedom of mind book level kinds of questions. Yeah.
right here. And I
It's
want
good.
everyone to know, I just got these books from Steve last week, and so I just got back home, and I'm looking forward to reading them. But yes, those interventions, like if it happens and you don't see immediate change, like that man has no idea who I am now.
He
Has
planted
no
that
idea.
seed.
Yeah.
He planted
So
that seed.
keep that belief within you as you're speaking to others and you are facilitating those conversations. It's okay if you never see the fruits of your labor, but it is our job as humans with ethics and morals that are trying to make the world a better place to have those conversations and to be authentic and honest. Because then you're some guy in Honduras who really stuck with a girl like me who's now on your podcast. So I encourage people to not lose hope.
Yeah, exactly. I am your fan, Irene, of Irene's Entropy. I know you have like 500,000 followers on Instagram. It's Irene's Entropy on
Entropy. Yeah,
on-
Irene's Entropy, and then anywhere on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, you can find my work. The coffee's launching this week, so doorwalkerco.com.
Mhm.
And please drink some coffee. Remember that you can walk through your door. And
Love
yeah.
it. Love the metaphor. And we will write a blog. It'll be on Substack with all the links to Irene, and stay in touch.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for your work, Steve. I was so honored to meet you last month, and I really look forward to continue working with you because I believe in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. And seriously, folks, there are 10 million or more former members in the United States of different cults or people who were born in China or the Soviet Union who know authoritarianism sucks. And we're a force if we can get our messaging together, like what you said today, Irene, about the importance of love and the importance of being the compass. What
Yes.
was the compass?
The compass of self-belief.
Self-belief and reality testing. If something's true, it'll stand up to scrutiny. Why not ask questions about it and be open to other perspectives?
Yep. Love
Thank
it.
you so much. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Awesome. Take care.